When Woody is stolen by a toy collector, Buzz Lightyear and his friends set out on a rescue mission to save Woody. But when Woody learns he's a prized toy from a bygone era, the question is whether or not Woody will want to return in this week's edition of Buddy Movies, Toy Story 2. Hi, I'm Mark, your host.
And I'm Anthony, your other host.
And this is Buddy Movies, the place where buddies talk about movies.
Alrighty. Well,
I have an audience tonight, so it's just funny. He's like staring at me.
Oh, that's not, no pressure or anything, not making you nervous or anything.
No pressure at all.
Yeah.
Hi. My kids, in honor of Toy Story 2, not really, but we didn't clean up tonight. They were playing with their toys and have quite the setup back here right now.
Oh, wow. I see that.
Let me move the camera a little bit. Oh, this is cool. So they got a whole big setup there with train tracks and everything. It's they built some pretty epic things with their toys.
Very nice. So have they seen all the Toy Stories, including the fourth one?
I think they have. You've seen all the Toy Story movies, right? Yes, they've seen all of them
already.
Including the fourth one. You haven't seen the fourth one?
I've seen a lot of it, but not all of it.
So you haven't sat down and watched the whole thing?
Yeah.
But you've seen all the like short movies too, right?
Yeah.
There's like a Halloween one and a Christmas one, and
okay.
I have not shorts.
I haven't seen all the shorts.
Yeah, they're all on Disney Plus. Gosh,
okay.
I love Disney Plus. We literally
check that out.
We got Disney Plus and literally abandoned Netflix like right away.
Yeah.
So like this, it wasn't even a question. So when everyone was freaking out about The Office leaving Netflix, I've already
you already jumped ship. You
for
jumped ship
like a year ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I still have Netflix, but it's only really because I have access to Netflix. Like I'm not paying for it. My parents are paying for it, and I still just kind of mooch off their account. So that's why I still have it.
Yeah, honestly, I think the only account I actually pay for is HBO Max.
HBO Max, okay. Yeah, because I do have. I split Disney Plus with my siblings, so I pay like was it $2 a month or $3 a month for it, which is nothing. And HBO Max, I get that through my parents. Amazon Prime, I pay for myself because I'm an Amazon Prime already.
I pay for Amazon Prime myself. What is it? I share a Vudu with my brother-in-law. Okay. So we both add movies to that all the time. What else? Yeah, I am kind of mooching Disney Plus off my parents for now, but that's they're going to be moving in with us eventually, so I don't know. I know they discourage that, but I don't know how. Yeah, I mean, like I don't know. You're allowed up to 5 accounts on there, anyways. You know what I mean? That type of thing. So I don't know. I don't know the legalities of it. Really, I don't. But
it's not like they require you to be on the same Wi-Fi network. If they started requiring you to be on the same Wi-Fi network, I mean that would cut out. Like you literally couldn't do anything about that.
They'd probably ruin their viewership. Truthfully, if they did that, they would probably like all screw over their numbers. So they kind of depend on people to mooch a little bit here and there. And there's so many of them, it just doesn't make sense to actually pay for all of them. Yeah, that was the funny thing is my brother-in-law and I were supposed to be. He pays for one thing, I pay for the other one, and we share it. But he would never wait for me to subscribe for it. Like I subscribed for Disney right when I signed up. He's like, "Oh, I did too." And it's like, "Wait, you were paying for Paramount Plus, so I was supposed to pay for Disney. What are you doing?" You know? But whatever.
So many streaming services. I did get Paramount Plus just for a free trial when I was looking for Indiana Jones 4, and they didn't even have Indiana Jones on Paramount. They didn't have any of them on it.
Mad. They had it for months. Because
why did they get rid of it?
I think that because a lot of these things have contracts made years in advance, so they have to honor these contracts.
But it's a Paramount movie, though.
It is a Paramount movie, but they signed a contract with Showtime at some point that they had to give it to Showtime for exclusive rights because it's on Showtime right now. So that happens. What was it? HBO, Showtime, and Netflix are the three that usually end up stealing the movies away from the studio's own objectives right now.
Right.
Disney is not doing that. However, what Disney is doing is if they have a contract with something, they're not releasing it on Disney Plus until that contract has expired. And then they release it on Disney Plus because Disney's like, no, we're showing it and we're showing it only here and we're not taking it off here. So once they have it, they're not getting rid of it. So like one movie that I know they did that with was Tomorrowland, because I've been wanting to show that to my son because I think he would love it. But we haven't been able to watch it yet because it's, I think, still running on Netflix or something like that.
Gotcha.
What was it? Harry Potter is another one that has contracts out at different places. So it's not on Peacock all the time like it's supposed to be. So it'll be on Peacock for like a month, and then it'll disappear for like 6 months, and then it'll come back again and then disappear for 3 months because different places got the rights to it for certain periods of time, whether it was Netflix or HBO or wherever. Like we couldn't get it on Peacock, and I was like, why can't we get this? And I was like, oh, it's on HBO now. And then suddenly it wasn't on HBO anymore, but it was back on Peacock for just a month. And then it left Peacock again and went somewhere else.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Cause they make these contracts years in advance. You know what I mean? Yeah. Especially for the popular movies like Indiana Jones, Harry Potter, you know, Lord of the Rings, any of the big franchises where, you know, yeah. And so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, I did want to let you know I saw Black Widow last weekend.
What do you think?
Overall, I would place it middle of the ground in the MCU canon. Like there's worse movies in it, but there's definitely better movies in it at the same time. Overall, I would say I liked it. But yeah, I'd probably place it right in the middle. There were things I didn't like about it, but some things I also liked about it. So
did it screw up the story at all?
How do you mean? As far as
like, my thing is they're making this movie after she's dead. So is it going to ruin her being dead? Like, did they find some trick way to bring her back? Is basically what I'm wondering.
No, she stays dead there.
That's what I figured. I kind of figured what's going to happen is the blonde. I kind of figured the blonde girl in the movie was going to end up being the next Black Widow for the Avengers is what I'm thinking is going to happen.
Okay.
So I think that might be the story, but I could be wrong.
The thing that honestly bothered me the most was that it's set between Civil War and Infinity War. The movie just came out 5 years too late. Like I would have been so much more interested in this movie 5 years ago, you know, when it's actually taking place, and Marvel dropped the ball and didn't get it released 5 years ago like they should have. And so now, like it would have been a lot more interesting had the movie actually been released 5 years ago, like it was actually taking place. I don't know how Marvel dropped the ball on that one, but it just, the movie, for that reason, the movie sticks out like a sore thumb in a way, because you're just like,
I think drop the ball is the real thing here. It seems like they've turned it into a PR disaster too, with the suing and everything. And
oh
my gosh, this movie, like, it should have been released a number of years ago. People have been asking for it forever. Like, it was literally a slap in their face when Wonder Woman came out, because it was a female-led superhero movie when Marvel could have been doing this all along. You know, people wanted it.
Yeah, and they didn't get it. They didn't
get it, and then they go and they do this movie, which because I'm sitting here being like, people are talking about, well, Scarlett Johansson doesn't think she'll be doing any more projects. And I was like, well, she's dead. Like,
right. Where is she?
She's dead. Who, like,
come back as a ghost or something, or what? Yeah.
Like, so of course she's not going to do any more projects. And then the lawsuit. Oh my gosh. I'm wondering if it even has merit. I'll have to see.
From what I did a little bit of research on it. From what I could tell, Disney never explicitly said in her contract, we will only release this in theaters. We will give that traditional theater window. Apparently someone from Marvel, one of the higher ups from Marvel, told her that this will get a traditional theatrical release. So that's why that's kind of where she's coming from. But from what I can tell, Marvel told her that, but Disney did not tell her that.
I think the hard part is that it seems like she has some type of revenue tied into the theater sales, which first of all, from my understanding from studying and reading up, that's like the worst type of contract you get. That's literally like an amateur contract. That's like, if you don't know anything about movies, but they're giving you your first starring role, they'll say, oh yeah, we'll let you get some of the profits for the movie. Because as we know, Hollywood movies are never profitable because one movie will make $1 billion, but they'll throw in the production cost of a whole bunch of other movies in there to kind of like cover the losses of other movies that are just bombs, you know? So no, on paper, no Hollywood movie has actually ever been profitable from what I understand. It's like some crazy stat like that. So
okay.
What you want to do is you want to tie it to either actual like tickets sold or actual days of release or to some other type of like thing that they can't fudge like that, you know?
Yeah. Apparently, she had in her contract, if this had stayed in theaters or had gotten a more traditional theatrical release and not been released on Disney Plus the same day as theaters, then she would have gotten at least tens of millions of more dollars from this movie, because the movie grossed, I want to say 300 some million at the box office, which is absolutely bottom. Like, it's the worst grossing Marvel movie of all time currently, because it only grossed 300 million at the box office because they placed it on Premier Access on Disney Plus at the same time it came out in theaters. So a bunch of people saw it on Disney Plus, and a significant portion of her paycheck was coming from box office receipts. Disney against her, she was really pissed that Disney did this, but Disney released how much she actually got paid for the movie, and she got paid $20 million for the movie. But she could have gotten paid 50 or 60 if the movie had done, grossed $1 billion or so than what typical Marvel movies do. So that's why she's all, up in arms about this.
I mean, there's also obviously, the COVID thing that would be slowing it down. But I also, truthfully, the fact that the movie came out 5 years late, I mean, it's not really a plot point necessary movie. At this point, it's literally like a moot story. I'm looking forward to Eternals more than this movie, just because they've actually made that seem compelling, okay. Yeah. And explain to me how these things have been on Earth and weren't involved in anything. And now they are for some reason.
And Disney really fired back at Johansson. One of their quotes was, they said she has a callous disregard for the COVID pandemic. They really fired back
they fired back so hard that it actually made them look bad. Yeah. Though, because it shows them like, it's like one of those things where it could have been somewhat true, but they went so far with how harsh they were on it that even if there is a grain of truth in it, no one's going to take it seriously anymore. Yeah. It's billionaires fighting with decamillionaires and no one cares.
And now I heard Emma Stone is considering suing for Cruella, because Cruella was released again the same time on Disney Plus as it was theaters, so she could have gotten paid more if it had been in theaters before Disney Plus. So this could have you could see a lot of people start suing Disney over this.
I just think it is a little foolish for them, though. I mean, yes, they could have made more money. They could have. Yeah. But let's be honest here, with the COVID stuff going on, if they just did a strict theatrical release, I honestly don't think it would have made that much more money. I really don't. I think Black Widow making $300 million is great for it. Yeah. I think maybe it would have hit that $500 million if they hadn't done the Disney release. But it wasn't going to be
$1 billion.
It wasn't going to be Black Panther. It wasn't going to be $1 billion movie. It just wasn't. It's not in its cards to be that. Yeah. Because with COVID out, people are not going to theaters much anyways. So it could have made a little bit more money, but it wasn't. It's not Black Panther. It's not Infinity War. It's not Endgame.
No, not by
it's just not going to be there. Maybe 500 million, but not really. Yeah. The one thing that did hurt is I think they released it in China exclusively on Disney Plus.
Okay.
Which
that's a big hit right there because
China's a huge hit
market.
They are a huge market, but they're not so huge that they beat. They're getting close on some movies where they beat America, but not quite there yet.
Yeah. And again, this could have all been avoided if you had released it 5 years ago, because Disney Plus didn't exist 5 years ago, and the pandemic didn't exist 5 years ago. So this would have been probably $1 billion movie at least 5 years ago.
I honestly think it would have been way better years ago when people actually cared about this storyline. But it's literally like you guys, it's literally like they went, oh, hey, we forgot to tell you this phase 3 story. Let's throw it into phase 4 now.
And it's like, we're just going to tack it on. It's out of place. It's completely out of place.
I mean, is there anything in there that ties it into
there's an end credits? There's an end credit scene. I won't spoil it. There's an end credit scene that will tie into a phase 4 plot point. Okay. So they do something there, at least in the end credits there. I won't even say who it involves in the MCU, but yeah, there is an end credit scene that does tie into phase 4. But still, it's just, it's 5 years too late. It's like too little, too late. But
did you hear about Sebastian Stan? Apparently, his mom went to see Black Panther because he was in the movie.
Okay,
and I didn't hear about she called them back and goes, "Hey, I thought you were in this movie." He goes, "Well, I am. It's at the end." And she goes, "Oh, I didn't stay past the credits."
Oh, ouch! That hurts.
I think it's hilarious though, because it's like he can say he's in the movie, but he's not really. It's like Gwyneth Paltrow forgetting that she's in Spider-Man Homecoming because they filmed so many of those scenes, so many of those movies at the same time that she didn't know that they took that scene that was technically for something else and they threw it into Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah. Man. Well, let's dive into Toy Story
2, the greatest sequel that Pixar has ever made.
I don't know about that.
Maybe not the greatest sequel, but definitely the best number 2.
The best number 2? I'm trying to think of all the number 2s. Incredibles 2 is definitely
Monsters
better than
University. You have Monsters University. You have Incredibles 2. You have Cars 2.
Cars 2, Finding Dory. It's technically a second.
Finding Dory is technically a second, I guess. But I still think that Toy Story 2 continues on the story and builds the world better than any of those other movies do.
I would actually agree with that. It's probably of those sequels the best, also from a character standpoint, because I love these characters so much. Mm-hmm. So you may be right on that.
They add new characters in.
And they add some new ones.
And they have some great stories with those characters. They don't and they don't have to retread ground that they've already been on because they came out with the sequel so close to the other movie. Whereas a lot of times the sequels, except for I think Cars 2, the second movie comes out so far afterwards, like a decade afterwards, that literally the people who saw the first one are now adults when they were kids before, Right. So you actually got to see this as a kid. You saw Toy Story and then you saw Toy Story 2.
Yeah.
I think Cars was close. Cars, actually, let me see.
Yeah. The first Cars was 2007 or 2006. The second one was
Cars 2 was 2011.
Oh, 11. Okay. So it's a couple years.
Yeah, and then Cars 1 was 2006. So yeah, I guess that is pretty far. So this is only 4 years apart, 95 to 99, but still. So where are my notes? But yeah, so I mean, I just love the opening sequence of the movie. They just jump right into the world building.
That's one of my pros. Is the opening sequence is astounding. It's simply astounding, especially for 1999.
99, I know.
99.
It's only the third Pixar movie too. So
yeah. they were just flat out showing off. And you know what? I don't mind one bit. Like, go ahead and show off. Please do. All these cool point of view shots of Buzz during that scene.
They got him fighting. They got around. They're using. I love the what was it? The homage they did to 2001: A Space Odyssey in it too, where they did the sound as he's jumping from the pillars.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's like dun, 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 dun.
I actually missed that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of an homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey because it's the music from that movie. And then of course, they use the whole Zurg and Buzz Lightyear thing to also pay homage to Star Wars.
Oh yes. Darth Vader
yes, they have that. I just love the fact that it's a kids movie. You're watching them, they're fighting, and then suddenly, poof, Buzz Lightyear's dead. Like he's just blown up.
He gets decapitated. His whole body.
The whole upper body gets dissolved.
Upper half.
Yeah, the upper half. So it's just you're like, wait, what just happened? And that's when it breaks, and they're playing a video game,
Rex.
and
yeah.
So I mean, that was pretty. I just thought that was brilliant right there. And then you get to see the toys back in their room. They're just jumping right into the whole story there. They don't have to retread the ground. We don't have to explain that toys are alive.
Mm-hmm.
But we also get to see what's it like more to be a toy? These toys are aspiring. Some of the toys are aspiring to be something because you have Prospector and Jessie who want to be collector's items, And that comes from their own emotional trauma of having been rejected by owners or never having gotten an owner, So they expanded on, okay, how do toys feel? This is how toys feel about this stuff, We get to see, we get to see the toy store, which you get to see the Barbie. They introduced Barbie into this one, and
Al's toy barn. Yep.
Yes, Al's Toy Barn. You get to see, the Buzz Lightyear aisle, and that there's a defect with all Buzz Lightyears, so it's not just their Buzz Lightyear, which to me expands upon the whole. There's clearly something off with the production of the Buzz Lightyear toys.
Wait, you say a defect? What's the defect? What do you mean?
They think they're actually the Buzz Lightyear. Every single Buzz does that. They don't realize they're toys. All the other ones, every other toy knows they're a toy. But true. None of the Buzz Lightyears, for some reason, know. And even Zurg doesn't know that he's a toy. He thinks he's Zurg. So it's just like this interesting thing that's like this wide defect amongst Buzz Lightyear toys. So why? And the other thing is, I'm glad they didn't explain why. We don't get any explanation as to why the toys are alive, why they have feelings, how they interact with the world. They don't explain it. And to me, that's a point for them because it would be so tempting and so easy to just be like, oh, well, this is how it does. Or there's this magic thing or, something as to why toys are alive. But they don't bother explaining it because they don't need to, because it just makes the world more fun to not know why toys are alive and to see them react to different people being around and how they're willing to interact with the world. They cause a 20-car pileup in this movie. They got all those accidents and stuff, but so they're willing to interact with the world a little bit, but not so much as they'll find out that they're actually alive. So it's just interesting to see what they're doing there with that. So they expand the world. You get to know it a little bit more. What was it? Yeah, the Prospector story, Jessie's stories, the feelings. Okay. Yeah. It's not about getting back to Andy this time either. Mm-hmm. It's more about exploring this lost past that Woody didn't know he had. Because for some reason Woody didn't know that there was a TV show connected to who he was. Right. I would think that's because he's so far disconnected from whoever his original owner was, or maybe Andy is his original owner because he was never, opened by someone else. I don't know. But for some reason, he didn't know that he was some type of star toy. And we get to see it's more about fixing the defects, not defects, but Woody's kind of been a bit of a jerk in the first movie.
He has. In the first movie, he thought he was the greatest toy and Andy's favorite, and that was a big part of who he was. He was a very arrogant.
If you see the pre-production for that stuff, if you ever get a chance, I have the Blu-rays for Toy Story 1, and the behind the scenes, they go through how he just wasn't even a likable character. They had to rewrite him. Like, there's scenes where he's just like straight out mean to the other toys and kind of like ruling them with an iron fist. It's almost like he was the villain and Buzz Lightyear was going to come and save them. But they had to change that up. And the way they changed it up was they hired Tom Hanks to play the voice and then used his input on what the character would be and how to like change him so that he's a likable character, so he could still be a jerk, but not quite as big of a jerk.
Yeah, be a redeeming character by the end.
Yeah. So you care for him a little bit more, but this movie even softens him more, and you realize what he means to the other toys to the point where they're willing to leave the house to go rescue him.
Right.
They didn't do that for Buzz. Mm-hmm. They didn't they tried to reach down with the monkeys, but in this, they straight up they're like, no, we are leaving the house and we're going to find him.
They drop everything and go.
Yeah.
And even with Woody's character, him going out to rescue Squeaky, like a very selfless act, He's Wheezy. Yeah, he does. Yeah. Wheezy, sorry. Yeah, Wheezy.
It's all good.
But this movie, like you said, as far as I love when sequels, always the good type of sequels are sequels that expand on the world and the characters that are in that world. That's why I love movies like Aliens, Terminator 2. All these good sequels are sequels that build on the first movie. They don't just copy the first movie, but they bring new things in at the same time as building on what you saw in the first movie. They bring back things that you loved in the first movie, but also build on that. And this movie definitely does that.
So I guess that's my main point. I think it's just a fun movie. I mean, there are maybe some weak points. We'll see if you do bring those up. I got a little bit of trivia this time because they're behind this. But we'll cover that during trivia.
Oh, at the end.
So you can do your negative.
Yeah.
You can do your cons now.
My negatives. Yeah. Well, I want to do my really quick fast stats on this movie just because I forgot to do that at the very beginning here. Yeah. It was released November 24, 1999, so right before the turn of the millennium there. The story is by a lot of people. John Lasseter, Pete Docter, who did Up, Ash Brannon, Andrew Stanton, who has directed many Pixar films. And the screenplay was written by a bunch of people. Stanton, Rita Haysaw, Doug Chamberlain, and Chris Webb. And it got one Oscar nomination for Best Music Original Song for Jessie's song, When She Loved Me, which is written by Randy Newman, who we all know Newman wrote and performed the iconic You've Got a Friend in Me from the first film. So he returns in this movie. And this movie also won the Golden Globe for Best Picture, Comedy or Musical. And currently, it is one of the best reviewed movies in Rotten Tomatoes. It has a 100% out of 169 reviews.
Wow. 100%.
100%.
Wow. Yeah, I knew it was high on the other scale. I saw, it was like 7.9 on IMDb, which I was shocked by because that's high for IMDb. Like, it's hard to get that high. Yeah. So,
on the flip side, Metacritic. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Metacritic at all. It's another critics site. It has a Metascore of 88, and it's the only Toy Story film not to have a Metascore in the 90s. So there's a kind of a flip side to that. But so I'll start out by some of my pros here. A lot of them kind of already went over. Some little things I liked also in the film. This movie it references the first movie a lot, which I love because I love the first one. Even little things like the fake out in the beginning with Buster, the dog. They play him off like he's kind of like Scud from, I think his name was Scud, Sid's dog from the first movie. He's this vicious dog. Then there's a reversal that, they're just playing. Like, I love that little moment. It's just a very brief moment, but I love that they do that. Just a nice nod to the first movie. I love how they play on, like we were talking about, I love how they play on Buzz's original default settings / personality in the movie. When the real Buzz is locked in, Buzz Lightyear box in Al's Toy Barn. The new Buzz is introduced, and we get a lot of funny moments as they all react to him acting in very default setting Buzz Lightyear ways to certain events and situations, and they're all very confused as to Buzz. But what are you doing, Buzz? And it's literally the Buzz from the first movie. So again, just a nice reference to the first Toy Story here. And there's just a great dynamic that forms between the old Buzz and the new Buzz. They're kind of enemies at first, but by the end, like it's just cool to see them interact and how just contrasting their different approach to solving problems and stuff. It's just really interesting and entertaining. So as far as the theme goes, this movie has a really, really good theme. I will say I don't think I have seen this movie from start to finish probably since I was 7 or 8 years old.
Wow.
And the reason for that is because I just did not like this movie as a kid. I'll get into why in just a second here. I did not like this movie as a kid. So that's why I kind of avoided it since then. I was like, I didn't really like this as a kid, so I'm not really going to go back and revisit it much. But this movie has a really good theme, and it really comes out whenever Buzz is talking to Woody, when he's trying to convince him to come back to the house, to Andy. He says to Woody that you once told me that life's only worth living if you're being loved by a kid. And I just think that is a really profound, moving statement right there, because it really shows that this movie is really telling you that life is all about being loved and having relationships around you. It doesn't have to be even romantic relationships, just having friendships. The life without relationships with someone is just empty and meaningless. That's really what this movie is saying. And I think that's really, that's a really positive thing to put forth in your movie. I think because it's so accurate, to how humans are. We need relationships to basically survive. I mean, if there's one thing we found out in Castaway was that we go crazy if we're stuck in one spot with no one to interact with. We form a volleyball as companionship because we need some kind of companionship in our lives. And I just love that theme of this movie. It's just a really poignant and powerful theme that I just didn't, pick up on as a kid when I was 7 or 8. And the first movie was really about self-identity, and being okay with not being great. That's who Buzz Lightyear discovered in the end. He wasn't this space ranger. He was just a toy, and he learned to accept the fact that he was just a toy. Just being okay with that. And this movie takes that theme a step further, I think. So I think it really, like you were saying, it builds on the first movie. So yeah, in that way, this movie I really, really love the theme of what this movie is saying to audiences.
So as usual, Anthony.
As usual.
With you saying you don't like a movie.
Right.
And then you come out here and talk so gleamingly about it.
I know. It's kind of a pattern here. But I do have some reasons here why. I'll start out with why I didn't like it as a kid. And then I'll have a separate section here really quick why I didn't like it as an adult. Or why I think it's a little weaker as an adult, I should say. It really comes down to this movie was just too dark for me as a kid. I really thought this movie was too dark. I did not like Zurg. I did not like Zurg. I thought he was way too scary and terrifying and frightening. For some reason,
forget Zurg. How about that dream sequence at the beginning?
I was getting to that.
The nightmare. Oh my gosh!
I think that is way too. I think that's too far for a kid. Like he's being swallowed up by these. He's in basically a barrel, being swallowed up alive
by toy pieces.
Yes, I thought that was absolutely terrifying. I hated that scene as a kid. I hated that flashback scene. And even with Zurg, and for some reason, I was okay with Sid's horror house, his horror chamber that was his room in the first movie. Like for some reason, I was okay with that. Even though looking back on it, like that'd be kind of terrifying, right?
Honestly, except for the freaky toys.
There's freaky toys.
Sid's room was my room. I had that same wood paneling, and I had the same green carpet.
Oh, man.
I'm not even kidding. Like, I look at Sid's room, and I'm just like, oh, my God, that was my room as a kid. Except the creepy toys. I didn't tear toys apart and put them together like that. That was...
Right. Dismember toys. And
decapitate
them, put different heads on different toys. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. For some reason I was okay with Sid's room as a kid. Even Scud, he was kind of terrifying to me, or a little scary to me, but I was still overall okay because I grew up with a dog, so I was okay with that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that trash can scene, I still don't like it. To this day as an adult, it's just freaky to me. Anytime someone's getting swallowed up whole while they're still living, like alive, it just doesn't. Also, as a kid, I never liked Al as a character. I don't know why. I can't really pinpoint why exactly, but I just kind of always found him creepy. And I hated Woody's kidnapping scene. It really, really always frustrated me. I hated that he got away with it, that his mom didn't catch him running off. And it just really got me really flustered and stressed when I saw
it plays to childhood fears of kidnapping, though. You know what I mean? Like, your parents are always telling you stay close and, don't go wander too far. And, you have those fears of kidnapping. Yeah, and then this guy does it and gets away with it, and that they put it in a kid's movie. They put a kidnapping scene in a kid's movie, and we're okay with it.
And all the other toys are watching from the window. That's the worst part. They know this is happening and they can't really do anything about it. So they just have to watch as this guy steals Woody and just runs away with him. So yeah, I didn't like that scene, and that's why as a kid I didn't even like rewatching this scene because I knew it was coming. I was like, okay, Woody's about to be kidnapped again. I have to watch this again. So I just kind of avoided this movie on rewatches as a kid. I just did not like it. I also didn't like the Prospector. I didn't like a lot of characters in this movie as a kid. I didn't like the Prospector, especially when he tears Woody's arm and threatens to cut him up into pieces. I did not like him for saying that. I thought I thought he was a very I don't know what word I would have used back then, what word I would have used, but I did not like him at all. I thought he was a really bad man, I guess is what I probably would have said. And then how he locks the vent and prevents Woody from escaping, just, I don't know, that kind of disturbed me also as a kid, just how they turn around and he's locking the vent with his little axe or whatever he has there, and just basically imprisoning them in the room. I just kind of disturbed me as a kid. I guess that's kind of the
he's a trusted mentor.
Yeah,
he's a trusted mentor character who they've all been relying on for stuff, and then suddenly he's the twist villain, and it's like, oh my gosh, why don't we know this before? Why didn't we see this before? Because it actually makes sense now. But two, like, oh my gosh, as a kid, I guess for a kid's movie, I could see how this would be just way too creepy.
It is. I really thought it was.
So he's a mentor character who's suddenly flipping on him, and they can't stop him. Can't stop him. So it plays on that whole powerlessness that kids can feel, because they are just kids.
Yeah. Another thing was I really wasn't a fan of Jessie or her depressing backstory. I thought that flashback scene as a kid just really depressed me. I didn't really know what depressing was or anything like that, but I just felt really, really sad in that moment, which, that's what Pixar was trying to do. They were trying to, make you feel all these emotions, but it really depressed me as a kid. And there was never a moment in the first Toy Story where I felt really depressed like that. But that scene, that Jessie's backstory scene, the second one, really, it just made me really, it was a real downer for me in the movie, I guess, So those are the things I didn't like about this movie as a kid. And that's why I really never went back to it. I just thought it was too dark. And
So what didn't you like as an adult?
As an adult, when I was watching it here, I honestly think the story itself is weaker than the first movie, and it's just flat out not as interesting as the first movie. What I loved about the first one was that you have this conflict between Woody and Buzz, and you have Buzz's identity crisis, and Woody having to humble himself and deal with a new new toy, a new fancy toy, and it's kind of the end of an era to Woody in a way, because he's no longer Andy's favorite, or he thinks he's not. Andy's favorite. And as well as we talked about this a little bit in film class, the movie has kind of a meta commentary on the decline of the Old West and the introduction of space as the new frontier type of thing in the 50s and 60s. So I like how they, comment on that a bit. And it's just a lot more thoughtful story, I think, in the first one. The second one, I think, is just a bit weaker. And when I thought about this also, Woody and Buzz don't interact much in this movie. They spend the majority of the movie apart, whereas in the first movie, they spend a lot of time together. And I love the interactions between Woody and Buzz. And this movie separates them for 70% of the movie, at least 70, 75% of the movie, they're apart. And so that's something I think they're great together. And this movie kind of
it's not really a buddy movie.
Right. They're detached for the majority of the movie. And I think they're at their best when they're together and when they're interacting.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was thinking it was kind of the same way in the third movie, but not really. Because in the third movie, they're kind of separated for a short second act.
Yeah.
You know, they have
Spanish mode too.
He does switch to Spanish mode, but they're together for most of the first act. And then Woody leaves the school. But then they're separated for a bit of a second act. And then when Woody comes back to save them all, like, they save Buzz, and then, he's in Spanish mode, but, it's not, they're together a lot more in that movie than they are in the second one.
Yeah, and that's, I think I would pick the third one over the second one still. Because the third one I still think is a more entertaining movie than the second one even. And then I have the villains in this movie. So you have kind of three different villains. There's multiple villains here. You have Zurg, but he's really only a villain to Buzz. He's not really a villain to anybody else. So that kind of makes him a little less interesting. And then you have Al. I'm not sure if you could classify Al as a villain. He steals Woody away, so he's kind of a bad guy in that way.
He's a bad guy.
He's a bad guy. Okay, and
he's stealing him to make for personal gain.
For personal gain.
It's like printing money, when he's taking the pictures and stuff.
Right.
It's pretty bad, because he's not stealing him. It's not like he stole him to just like have him, I need to complete my collection. He's him
trying to profit
so that he could sell him off and make even more, which I think is even worse, because he didn't steal him to give him a better home. He stole him to like literally just make money.
Yeah. And then you have the other villain, the prospector, he's largely cut off from the main group. And like we were saying, like it's like a twist. He only turns villainous towards the last, half hour of the movie or so. And he's really only, he's only with Woody and Jesse's gang. Towards the end, he, interacts a little bit with in the airport scene with the others, but for the most part, he's really cut off from the other group. So he's just really a villain with Woody and Jesse's group. So, and whereas in the first movie, you had Sid, who was really a villain to everybody, and all the toys come together in the end to unite against Sid. Whereas in this movie, the villains are kind of all split up into different groups, and there's not really one common one in a way, So yeah, those are my complaints about this movie. Just a little bit of a weaker story. The villains aren't as good, and it's still pretty dark. I honestly think it's still pretty dark, even especially for kids. I think it just leans a little bit too heavy on the dark side. But yeah, that's what I had.
Okay.
So
trivia.
What do you got?
Let's see. What I have is this movie went through some
production
hell. Yes. I was actually just writing down that term right now. I was just typing that out because it literally, what was it? Because they knew they needed to start developing the sequel like right away after the movie came out. They ended up scrapping the idea that they had and were building for a couple of years and decided to redo the whole project in January of 1999.
And it came out in November.
January 1999 is when they decided that they couldn't do the other movie that they had been making for 3 years. They have to start something new. So they scrapped the idea there. And then they wrote this one in apparently John Lasseter and I think Pete Docter and a couple of guys locked themselves away in a cabin for like a weekend and came up with this movie and went with this story. So not only that, but then they started making the movie. And then I think it was in September They accidentally deleted the film.
Yeah, that's one of the things I had. That's one of the famous things, or infamous, I should say, things about the movie. They almost deleted the entire movie of this. Do you imagine how disastrous that would be?
Yeah.
And they were saved.
It wasn't on any of the servers. No. It was saved by somebody
a woman. She was on, I think, maternity leave, and she took a copy of the movie with her to work on it at home on her own home computer, and that's the only way this movie was saved.
Because they were pressed for so much time. They were all working so hard and so crazy that they were, splitting off and using copies elsewhere to like make stuff. And that actually saved them.
Yeah.
But after this, I guess Pixar actually started making rules for how to make these movies so that they didn't end up pushing their people this hard ever again, because they pushed them hard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I read that they covered the extra copy in blankets and drove it back to the studio, and they were able to recover most of the film. I think 90% of the movie they got back. So,
which is crazy.
It's just crazy to me to think that they almost completely lost this movie.
I mean, there are movies that we have lost to time, things that were on film and are just completely deteriorated and are lost. They literally, I don't know what movies they are because they're gone, and that's why there is the, Criterion Collection, because they're so big on saving and preserving older films. And then there's, I think the library, it's called the Library of Congress, I think, but they do more than just like Congress stuff, there's films that are saved there too. And there's these societies that like preserve these things because it is possible to lose them still. Like, as much as hard drives are good, eventually you have to keep using them. Otherwise they just die. So there's going to be a day when you go to access something that you've saved on a hard drive and it just won't work. And if it's a solid state drive right now, there's not as many easy ways to access those as there were the non-solid state ones, the ones that twist around, because you can you can take the components out and get the stuff out, information out still, whereas the solid state drives don't. You can't. Like, there may be some way that I don't know of, but last I knew there wasn't really much you can do if it dies on you.
That's why I have two external hard drives now. I used to only have one, and I ended up losing all my footage, and I was so incredibly upset at that. And since then, I have always have two, and I always make sure it's backed. Everything's backed up.
I am floored that you only have two. I got so paranoid about losing stuff. I think I literally have 6 different hard drives.
Oh wow! See, mine are like they're both 4 terabyte hard drives, so they're not cheap hard drives. I have so much stuff that if I would have to spend hundreds of dollars if I want to have 6 or 7 of these hard drives.
I have a 6 terabyte and a 2 terabyte. Okay. And then a bunch of 1 terabytes. So it's pretty much like, I think I have like 6 of the 1 terabyte ones. I think I bought one every single semester for college.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man. But man, I was like so paranoid about losing stuff that I just went a little crazy with it.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't blame you one bit. Let's see. The other bit of trivia I had here was, so whenever driving around the Al's Toy Barn, so they drive down the Buzz Lightyear aisle, right? And the Barbie, the tour guide who's a Barbie tells them that back in 1995, short-sighted retailers did not order enough dolls to meet demand. And this is an in-joke and a fact that whenever the original Toy Story came out, the sellers did not think the movie would be a hit, and they did not order enough Buzz Lightyears and other dolls to be able to keep up with demand.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually know this, but the joke is also a self-deprecating dig at Mattel itself, because the Pixar tried to be able to license a Barbie doll to be in the first Toy Story, but Mattel would not license it to them because they thought the movie would flop. And so they didn't have a Barbie doll in the first Toy Story.
Wow.
And so then after the huge popularity of the first one, they certainly agreed to have a Barbie doll in the second one here.
That's funny.
So, yeah.
I think it's funny that they thought it would flop, but I mean, it was a risk back then. We know them as such a big powerhouse now, but
it was the first fully computer animated movie of all time. Like it was, no one had ever seen anything like it before. So, other thing I had, the dust in the scene where Woody meets Wheezy has apparently set a record for the number of particles animated for a movie by computer. I don't have what the number of particles was, but apparently a lot of particles for that.
Apparently, probably at that point, maybe?
At that point, yes. I don't think it's probably the case today, but back in 99. And then the last thing I had was the scene in the airport, the baggage area. Each frame of that took an average of 70 hours to render. 70 hours for each frame, 24 frames per second. And that's a 3 or 4 minute scene. So do some math there and you'll
nuts.
It's just crazy to me. Yeah. What all was involved, what all had to be done to bring animated movies to life back in the late 90s when things were just kicking off. It's just astounding.
It takes even more for that now. There's some of these movies that I think they said, I can't remember which one of them. It was one of I think Monsters University, where it would take, if they didn't have all the farms of computers, it would take like 1,000 years to actually render on a single computer. Something crazy like that. It was just like something stupid long to render the one movie if they were rendering it on a single computer. But, they have these giant farms that just have interconnected, computer units. I don't even know how it works myself. I just know it's crazy and huge and lots of memory.
And it's just crazy to me also think back then, one single computer took up an entire room. Like they were huge back then. It's just... Oh, wait, sorry. I'm thinking way back in the 50s. Never mind. Back in the 90s, it wouldn't have been that large.
How long ago do you think the 90s are, man?
I mean, the 90s were like, at this point, they're 30 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I guess technically the beginning of the 90s. Yeah, they are 30 years ago. Wow.
They are 30 years at this point. But yeah,
I got my first personal computer in the 90s, so I know for a fact that they didn't take up a whole room.
It didn't take up your entire living room?
I'm pretty sure I got my second and third personal computers in the 90s still as well.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking the first computers way back in
the first, those giant machines, like in is it Imitation Game, the movie with
what's it, Benedict
Cumberbatch, where he's playing
and now your phone has more computing power than those computers that took up an entire room had. I
was downloading a video game. Okay, I was downloading, what was it? Knights of the Old Republic, which is a Star Wars game that's like considered the greatest Star Wars game of all time. And I was downloading it for my computer, and because I'd bought it a while ago, so I signed back into Steam and downloaded it, and I was like, wait, 1.5 gigs? That's it? So I called a friend up, Billy, who I want to have on the show. I called him up and I was like, dude, did you know that Knights of the Old Republic is only like 1.5 gigs? He goes, oh yeah, man, I have that on my phone. And I was like, wait, what? You have it on your phone? Like, they have an app version? He goes, no, I just put the actual game on my phone. I was like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
Like, this is crazy. Yeah. So these video games that used to take discs, I did it with Final Fantasy VII as well, which was 4 discs. No, 3 discs. Sorry. It was 3 discs back in the day, and you'd have to switch out the discs in the middle of the game to keep playing it. It's like 2.5 gigs. Or something ridiculously low like that. Maybe 3 gigs. I don't know. But still, it was just like nothing compared to the amount of computing power we have now.
Mm-hmm. Even I read even somewhere like even your phone has more computing power than what the computers they used in the lunar module to land us on the moon. Just thinking about that is just, I don't know. It's just crazy to think about. But yeah.
Yes.
Well, folks, that is Toy Story 2.
Yeah.
You can let us know what you think in the comments or Facebook, message us, anything, anywhere. You can let us know what you think of
anywhere.
movie.
Text us if you have our numbers.
Text us if you have our numbers.
If you know who we are, if you have found us.
Right.
Don't be creepy.
But don't be creepy about it, though. Yeah, we don't need any more creepers. But yeah, next week, let's see. What are we doing next week? We are doing X-Men: The Last Stand.
X-Men: The Last Stand.
All right.
That is also on Disney Plus for now, so watch it soon.
Yeah.
I don't know. The X-Men's are popping up and disappearing at different times.
Yeah.
So they've had some of them on, and then they've gone away, and then they've come back, and because they're not quite settled with, like I was saying, all the contracts they have to. So some of the stuff from Fox is the exception to the rule for Disney. Some of it has disappeared.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I think it was the second Wolverine movie that they had up there, but then they took it down because they had to send it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. I know for a fact Logan's not going to be on there because it's rated R.
That's definitely, they're not putting anything R on Disney Plus. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. It's not anytime soon.
But yeah, so see that movie on Disney Plus, and you can watch it with us, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So we'll see you next week.
All right. See you next week.
Thanks for watching this episode of Buddy Movies. If you like what you saw, click here for more episodes. And remember to like, share, and subscribe for all of our latest content. If you really like what we do, consider supporting us on patreon.com/buddymovies. Thanks for watching, and remember to stay cool.